What's up, party people? So we are in chapter 27 of Matthew, and we're going to be going through the death of Jesus. This section is pretty intense. There's a lot of stuff that happens when Jesus yields up his spirit, as it says in Matthew. So it's a very interesting thing because he's been abandoned by everybody at this point. Every single disciple has abandoned him. Peter has denied him 3 times. Everybody. What's interesting is some of the women, it does point out that some of the women had followed and that had ministered to him and followed at one point. So, but with that, we'll jump into it. So, verse 45, now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of the bystanders, hearing it, said, this man is calling Elijah. One of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. So they flogged him, right, to try to cut down on the time he's on the cross. So he's in extreme pain. He's been bleeding since they flogged him. He's ripped half open. He's pierced in the hands and the feet, put up on a cross. And it says so at this point he's been on the cross for about 6 hours, right? And from the 6th hour to the 9th hour, so about noon to 3 p.m., there's darkness over all the land. So right in the middle of the day, when it should be bright, there's darkness everywhere. And he cries out, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, right? Why have you forsaken me? Even forsaken by God. So completely forsaken at this point. And this is actually, I think this is a quote from Psalm 22. I think a lot of people actually uphold that, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? So what's interesting, that psalm does go on to the sovereignty and righteousness of God, but the quote is from Jesus is this idea that he's even been forsaken by God. Obviously, he doesn't call Elijah and he yields up his spirit. He cries out and yields up his spirit. So in verse 51, and behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. Coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, truly this was the Son of God. There were also many women there, looking on from a distance, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. So the disciples' mother, the sons of Zebedee, James and John, and the mother of James and Joseph are there. Mary Magdalene's there. And he's yielded up his spirit. One thing that I think is interesting is this idea of the curtain of the temple. Curtain of the temple was a 30-foot by 60-foot curtain that hung in the temple. It separated the Holy of Holies with the rest of the temple. I'm not really sure the exact structure of it, but it basically separated the Holy of Holies, the place where God resided, that no one was able to go, except for like once a year. I think the priest had to go through a ritual. They would tie a rope to him when he went in case he died in God's presence, and then they could pull him out. So this idea that the temple from the temple curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from everything else was ripped into from top to bottom. I think that's just incredibly symbolic, from top to bottom, as if God initiates the rip of this curtain, rips it open, and the separation between the temple and where God lives and the rest of the world is laid bare, completely opened up. It is as if Matthew is saying, it accomplished what it was supposed to. Jesus' death has already started its work. That the separation between God and the world is done. That Jesus opened the curtain between the Holy of Holies and the rest of the temple and the rest of the world. One thing that I'll point out is that it doesn't completely destroy the hierarchy, though. Like, there is a hierarchy of orderliness and holiness still. Remember, Jesus didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So he's fulfilling this hierarchy of authority and sovereignty and power and glory to God, right? He's fulfilling all this. So, when it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it be given to him. Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen shroud and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. So, verse 62. The next day, that is after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember how that impostor said while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore order the tomb to be made secure until the third day, lest his disciples go and steal him away and tell the people he's risen from the dead, and the last fraud will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go, make it as secure as you can." So they went and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. So I think it's kind of funny here, because they had the Pharisees gathered before Pilate. The Pharisees. So the Pharisees were around for Jesus' teaching, and I would have to check, because I think he spoke mostly to the disciples when he was talking about his death and resurrection. But what he did say publicly about his death and resurrection was that he was going to destroy the temple and raise it in 3 days. And that is what the Pharisees used to convict him of his blasphemy charge. So either they had overheard him saying that he was going to rise on the third day after his death, or they understood what he said and twisted it anyway. That they understood that he was saying, when I tear down this temple and rebuild it in 3 days, that he was talking about his own body. The temple being a symbol of God's presence on earth. So I thought that was kind of funny. I wonder if the Pharisees understood that and used that as evidence against him anyway, or if they really didn't understand it and had overheard him say that at a different time. But to make sure that everybody knew that he was dead and that he couldn't rise from the dead, they posted soldiers outside, a guard outside the tomb to make sure it was secure. So, yeah, there we go. There we have it, the death of Jesus. So as we go through this chapter 27, Jesus was delivered to Pilate, mocked, crucified, beaten, scourged, then crucified. His death, right? Already we have signs of the victory of Christ's death and the temple curtain being torn in two, that the saints who had fallen asleep were raised, coming out of the tombs. So the dead were literally rising and walking around Jerusalem at this time, visiting people. Jesus is taken and buried, and they post a guard at the tomb. So that's all we have for chapter 27. We'll pick up in chapter 28. And spoiler, it's the resurrection. The real victory. So we have that to look forward to. And luckily we know the entire story now. They didn't at the time, which I think is kind of interesting to think about. It's like a good movie that you watch over and over again, and you know the ending, but it gets you every time. So that's all I have. Like and subscribe to catch all these videos. Put down below one of the interesting points you thought of this section of the text, or something that you've been thinking about with the crucifixion and resurrection, or just something that you liked about Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. And with that, I'll catch you in the next chapter. All right, peace.